The 15-inch butterfly keyboard MacBook Pro has been dead for almost a year now, but something weird is happening. I recommend it. You should buy one. Today, we're going to talk about why. What? Wait a minute. What the heck am I talking about? Why would I possibly recommend a 15-inch MacBook Pro with a butterfly keyboard? The 16-inch MacBook Pro is dramatically better. It has the same processors, but you get more performance for free merely because it has better cooling. You also get a larger and better display, much better microphones and speakers, and of course, who could forget the dramatically improved Magic Keyboard? And you get graphics where the base model with the 5300M outperforms the previous generation's higher-end Vega 20 graphics. Not to mention the fact that the Apple Silicon transition is nearly upon us with the first Macs coming out in October. So what am I talking about? When the 16-inch MacBook Pro came out, I made a video called The 16-inch MacBook Pro Effect, where I examined the instant depreciation that the 16-inch caused to the previous 2018 and 2019 higher-end MacBook Pros. Machines that were $3,000, $4,000 were instantly being cut almost in half overnight because of how good the 16-inch was. And one thing that I brought up at the end of that video was that it was almost to the point where the 15-inch MacBook Pro might actually be a good value just because of how much they had dropped in price. Well, it's been quite a while since I made that video, and the 16-inch MacBook Pro has matured a little bit. The 15s have had some time on the back burner to come down in price, and I am now ready to make the claim to you guys, ladies and gentlemen, right here, that you should buy a 15-inch MacBook Pro, if for no other reason than the fact that they are now affordable and, dare I say, a good value. Now, before we jump into why they're a good value, I do want to address the Apple Silicon in the room, because I know that there are a bunch of you sitting there going, I wouldn't be buying any Intel Mac right now because Apple Silicon is right around the corner. But I think it's important to have some perspective because, yes, Apple Silicon is coming probably next month in October. However, it's going to be starting on lower-end models. The 16-inch MacBook Pro, I'm expecting to get another Intel refresh probably in October or November, and that model will probably last until 2021. Keep in mind, Apple is still working on their higher performance chips. They're still working on a dedicated GPU. It's going to be a little while before the 16-inch gets a replacement. Right now, we're looking at Apple Silicon in the lower end of the market. So absolutely, if you're looking for a MacBook Air or an entry-level MacBook Pro, don't. Stop doing what you're doing and wait until October. However, there are a decent number of people for whom a 16-inch MacBook Pro is the performance target they're looking at, but it's probably still a little bit too expensive for some people. I mean, $2,400 starting. Sometimes you can get them down to $2,100 or $2,200, but they're still very expensive machines. If you are shopping in that like $1,400 to $2,000 price point, you end up in a weird spot because you're trapped between an Intel MacBook Pro 13-inch that isn't particularly powerful, runs on integrated graphics, and is probably going to be pretty outdated very soon, and a 16-inch that is also due for an update and is very expensive. And that's where the 15-inch MacBook Pro fits in perfectly. So let's take a look on eBay and talk about what I mean. Now, first of all, of the butterfly keyboard MacBook Pros, there are 4 different models. There's 2016, 17, 18, and 19 versions. So I've pulled up a couple of eBay searches, and the first one that I'm showing you is filtered for 2016 and 2017 15-inch MacBook Pros. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is because I want to specify, when I'm saying a butterfly keyboard 15-inch MacBook Pro, I am not talking about these models. So, what are we looking at here? Well, $1,300, $1,200, $1,000. These are overpriced and underperforming. These are not good value devices to be buying right now. So the pricing for the 1617s has been extremely stubborn. It is very, very difficult to find a 15-inch model at under $1,000. And it has been like that for over a year now. For whatever reason, the touch bars refuse to go below $1,000, and as such, they're not worth it. So stay away from the 16 and 17 models. So we'll set up another search to filter for the two models of 15-inch that you do want to look for, the 2018 and 2019s. So for our processor here, we're going to filter for Core i7 and i9 8th and 9th gen, and then we're going to go over to GPU, and we're going to select the 560X, 555X, and I don't see Vega 20 on here. Sometimes those are a little bit harder to find. They're also a little less common, so we're just gonna say screw it. And now what we are looking at is 2018 and 2019 15-inch MacBook Pros. Now a quick programming note for this, I didn't put those terms in the search bar. I always like to cast a wide net with a very vague search term and then narrow it down with these filters. That's usually the best way to get accurate listing results. Now, as we start scrolling through these listings, you're gonna notice something. These prices are going to look pretty enticing. And keep in mind, we are not doing any hunting around. This is just the first page once we've filtered down our results. And we're not just looking at base models here. If we scroll down, you'll notice some things that stand out. I mean, right here, this one's got a terabyte and 32 gigabytes of RAM, under $2,000. Here's another one, 32 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte, $1,600. It's pretty enticing. Now, I personally think the 2019s are a little bit better value. The really insane thing to me is that you can get the 8-core i9 models for well under $2,000. That is something that even a couple of months ago was not possible. But take a look at this eBay search. We filtered for under $1,900, Core i9 9th gen. Now, admittedly, there's not a lot of results, but they are very high quality. This first one, right off the bat here, $1,600. And for that, we are getting Core i9 2.3 gigahertz, the 560X graphics, 16 gigs of RAM, half terabyte SSD. For $1,600. This is a 1-year-old computer that was originally $2,800. And it's not the only one. Here's another one, same spec, 1850. Here's one which is, yep, same exact spec, 1784, $1,900. And obviously they can get more expensive as you start tricking them out with 32 gigs of RAM and 1 or 2 terabyte SSDs. But the point is, there is a surprising availability of Core i9 MacBooks at under $1,900. That's not just good for a Mac, that's good, period. Here's another search where I filtered for under $1,900 with the same Core i9 processor. And you'll notice that these prices are really not much more than what we were seeing for the Macs. There are plenty of these computers, and these are very comparable. Now, granted, some of them will have, more RAM, more storage. Sometimes you'll end up with like a 4K display, so, you can compare spec like that, but realistically, you're not paying an Apple tax to go for the MacBook Pro. The pricing is on par, almost exactly the same and sometimes less than comparable Windows laptops with the same processor. That is unprecedented. Now, if we scale back and we look at some of the 6-core models, the availability and the pricing is still really, really attractive. So here's that search where I had filtered for all 2018 and 19 15-inch models, but now I've capped the price at $1,500. And you can see there are a decent amount of options here. $1,330, here's one at $1,500, $1,400. So let's take two price points and put them into perspective. So $1,800 for the 8-core i9, 16 gigs of RAM, half terabyte SSD model from 2019, and then let's call it $1,600, maybe $1,500 for the 2018 or 2019 6-core models. So what exactly would you get for those same price points if you tried to buy a new MacBook Pro right now? So already you can see if you want to go for the 10th generation one with 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports, you're already at $1,800. You're already at Core i9 money. We saw plenty of 8-core 2019 MacBook Pros for the same exact price, with twice as many cores, plus dedicated graphics, plus a larger display. And at $1,500, you're going to be stuck with the 8th gen quad core and 8 gigabytes of RAM, whereas you could very easily get a 6-core model with twice or even 4 times the RAM and sometimes twice the storage for the same exact cost. I will tell you right now, if I had a budget of $1,700 and I was going to buy a MacBook Pro, I would buy a 15-inch MacBook Pro right now. Full stop. That's not something I thought I would be saying, because when the 16-inch MacBook Pro came out, it was so obviously better in such key ways that I thought it would completely render any competition with the 15-inch MacBook Pro useless. But the reason that we're having this discussion now is that the 15-inch MacBook Pro is no longer really competing with the 16-inch because it's not at that price point anymore. Now we're at a point where the 15-inch MacBook Pro is competing with the 13-inch, and it gets a lot more nuanced. Now, as much as the butterfly keyboard is stigmatized, and I wouldn't blame you if you avoided the 15-inch MacBook Pro purely for that reason, the 2018s and the 2019s legitimately aren't as bad as the rest. I whipped out the 15-inch 2019 MacBook Pro for this video, and I was using it for a couple of days as I was planning and writing this out, and to be honest, I enjoyed typing on it. Sure, I would still be worried about the long-term reliability of it, but it's not bad to type on. They really got the tactility nailed down a lot better than it was in the 2016 and 17 models. And the performance, especially with the price point considered, is not bad. Now, obviously, you're going to get more performance out of the exact same processor in a 16-inch MacBook Pro. I can prove that because I have both. I get more performance out of the 9880H in the 16-inch than I do out of the 9980HK, which is the arguably higher-end processor that I have in the 15-inch MacBook Pro. So in that regard, the 16 is better. You're getting more performance out of a very similar processor. However, this 16-inch MacBook Pro that I have costs like $1,000 more. So the trade-off is worth it. It's worth saving $1,000 to get that processor and lose about 5% of the performance. Heck yeah, sign me up. One thing you're definitely going to miss out on compared to a 16-inch is the graphics. The Radeon Pro 560X is not a particularly powerful GPU, but again, I have to say, we're undercutting the price of the 16-inch MacBook Pro, so realistically, you should be comparing it to a 13-inch with integrated graphics, and it's no competition at that point. Obviously, you're going to get better performance out of some dedicated graphics than no dedicated graphics. And I think that's something that we are all, including myself, guilty of in the tech sphere. As soon as something new and better comes out, we tend to regard whatever it replaced as worthless. I'm certainly guilty of this back last year when I covered the 16-inch MacBook Pro, and I was like, it is better in every single way. In some ways it's minor, like the CPU performance, but in some ways, like in graphics, it's just a cut and dry, this is better. However, that doesn't mean that the 2019 is completely useless. You could still edit 4K on that. Are you kidding? It's still got a Core i9. My model is pretty well spec'd. It has 32 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte SSD, the 560X graphics. That computer, when it was new, was $3,800, and people were willing to pay that because at the time, they thought it was worth it. I want to clarify, I did not pay $3,800 for this 15-inch MacBook Pro. If you don't remember my video from a year ago, I actually got that for free from Apple because of the repeated butterfly keyboard problems with my 2016 MacBook Pro. I'll link that video in the description if you want to check it out and see how I did it. So, the 2018 and 2019 15-inch MacBook Pros. Talk about a glow up. When they came out, they were kind of the laughingstock for being very, very expensive and arguable in terms of value, but now they're actually pretty solid. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Is this all nonsense? Am I being an idiot, or do you fully agree? Have you bought a 15-inch MacBook Pro recently? Let me know all of that stuff in the comment section below. I'm very curious to hear your guys' opinion on this. And of course, as usual, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at LukeMiani, and don't forget to check out my subreddit and my Twitch channel, which are linked in the description below. And with that, I will see you all in the next video.